Recently I watched the first few episodes of Obi Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus, and while I enjoyed it and it was great to see Ewan McGregor back in the role, I realised after watching I was honestly a little bit bored. And this is a feeling I've had for quite a while with Star Wars following the conclusion of the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy, while highly flawed, still excited me. I was always wondering where it was going to go next. It certainly played into nostalgia too much, but this was still a new era, a new setting of characters, and there were potentially dozens of new directions for the series to go in. But having given The Mandalorian a go and seeing bits of Boba Fett and hearing about all the other Star Wars shows on the way, for some reason I'm just completely unenthusiastic. Star Trek, on the other hand, despite its own problems, is still something I'm hyped for. I've made the effort to stay up to date with all of these shows, and even made a whole rant video when I couldn't catch the premiere of Strange New Worlds, so why is this? I've grown up with both of these franchises from a very early age. I literally can't remember when I first saw them, they've just always been on. As a kid I ran around pretending I was on a Starfleet away mission just as much as I did pretending I was a Jedi. So I thought I'd use this video to see if I can get to the bottom of why I'm still excited for Star Trek, but bored by Star Wars. And perhaps in doing so I can articulate some thoughts other people may have, or at least provide some food for thought for those who feel differently. Before we get to that though, this video is sponsored by my gaming channel Side Adventure. Up until recently it's really just been a fun hobby, but this year we've committed to really growing the channel. Our main two series right now are deep dives, video essays, in-depth reviews and other analytical videos on our favourite or indeed least favourite games, and Licensed Game Hell, a game series where we sit down and have a laugh playing games exclusively licensed from movies and TV shows. We've also toyed around with a new series where we battle our favourite pop culture icons in a PS2 wrestling game. It's incredibly daft but heaps of fun to make. We upload something new every 2 weeks, alternating between the two series. It would really mean a great deal if you could show the same support to Side Adventure as you have done with this channel. Head over by clicking the link down below to check out our videos, as well as subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the new uploads. Thanks again for supporting what I do, and with this promo out of the way, let's get stuck into the video you came to see. Over the past decade, there's been some vocal criticism of the cinematic universe model of blockbuster franchises, largely pioneered by the Marvel movies, and attempts have been made to duplicate its success in the worlds of DC, formerly the DCEU, the Godzilla, King Kong, Giant Monster universe, which I actually really think is quite good, and of course the ill-conceived Dark Universe thing from Universal. And after Disney bought Lucasfilm, this seemed to be the model they were attempting to replicate with Star Wars as well. And while Rogue One was a success, unfortunately Solo was a flop. The Escapist recently did an excellent video on the supposed lesson Disney learned from Solo, and I personally feel a lot of what's said in that video is right on the money. Star Wars, for most of its existence, was an event, something which only graced our screens once every 3 years or so, with decades between the trilogies. But with the MCU model, which now pumps out 3 movies every year, that feeling of event cinema gets diluted somewhat. And it seems for whatever reason this model didn't fit Star Wars. Audiences didn't feel the hype for Solo only 9 months after The Last Jedi. But while this concept of a stream of content rather than a trilogy every other decade was abandoned on the big screen, it seems to have found success on the small screen with Disney Plus. Its huge slate of Star Wars and MCU shows likely played a big part in making Disney Plus one of the world's biggest streaming platforms. Meanwhile, Paramount Global seems to be attempting something similar, albeit on a smaller scale, with Star Trek and Paramount Plus, formerly CBS All Access. The company has stated publicly they want new Star Trek every single week of the year, and while Paramount Plus and Star Trek as a brand isn't remotely as popular as Disney and Star Wars, they seem to be pulling it off. They met several of their subscriber targets early thanks to Star Trek, and now Paramount Plus is rolling out worldwide. And as I said, that has me really excited. Paramount Plus comes to the UK this month, and I can't wait to catch up on Discovery Season 4 and dive into Strange New Worlds. So why is that the case with Star Trek? But Star Wars, which has been freely available everywhere since Disney Plus launched, I'm content to just let fall by the wayside. Looking at the two franchises, I actually think there is a pretty clear reason why this stream of content approach works for Star Trek, but not necessarily for Star Wars. It really comes down to the style of storytelling in both franchises, and the precedents set by the franchises in the past. With Star Trek, its foundations are pulp-era, high-concept sci-fi, with literary influences from the 1950s and 60s. It has far more in common with the likes of Forbidden Planet, Skylark, and The Twilight Zone than it does something like Flash Gordon. And while there are sprinklings of westerns over Star Trek, that motif is much more obvious in Star Wars. Star Wars' cinematic influences come from John Ford westerns, David Lean epics, and Akira Kurosawa samurai films. And these influences are combined with far older thematic inspirations like Arthurian legend and the well-known Joseph Campbell hero's journey. To put it simply, Star Trek stories are usually speculative, whereas Star Wars stories are usually mythic. And this differing approach has had a big impact on the creative directions these franchises have been taken in. When Star Trek had its first big reboot of sorts, Roddenberry and co were perfectly happy to move beyond Kirk, Spock and McCoy and advance into a new century. While the ship was still called the Enterprise, the cast of characters, the status quo of the setting, and the entire look and feel was totally different. Whereas when Star Wars returned for its prequel trilogy, it was felt it needed to tie in with the Skywalker saga somehow. It needed to be about Anakin's fall to the dark side while he was Obi-Wan's apprentice. We needed to see Tatooine again and the Jedi, C-3PO and R2-D2. It's almost as if the elements established in the original trilogy are too big, too mythic to ever fully leave behind. When Star Wars returned again in 2015, the sequel trilogy also couldn't stray far from the Skywalkers, and even the standalone movies were closely tied with the events and characters of that saga. Modern Star Trek, meanwhile, is at its best when it's shaking things up, doing something totally new. Although Discovery did start as a prequel with many references to the original series characters and plots, it really hit its stride when it jumped into the future and explored a new era we had never seen before. Star Trek Picard, although it is my least favourite of the current Trek shows, still took a fan-favourite character and did something brand new with him. Both Lower Decks and Prodigy are also set at a point in the Trek universe we fans have never seen before, following characters we've never heard of, and at the time of writing I haven't seen Strange New Worlds yet, but it's still putting a new spin on a familiar era and established characters. The current slate of Star Wars shows can only stray so far from its mythic foundations. The Mandalorian as a series and the race's entire backstory literally only exists because Boba Fett had a really cool helmet in Return of the Jedi, and now Boba Fett has his own show anyway. It's great to see Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan, but we're once again back on Tatooine, hiding from stormtroopers and filling in another chapter of the Skywalker saga. Even the new planets and characters introduced never stray very far from what we've seen before. More deserts, more forests, more droids, more Inquisitors. Some would say, well, of course those things are there, that's what Star Wars is. And maybe that's true. But Star Trek has gotten along just fine without the Klingons popping up all the time. It's jumped around in different eras, some familiar, some totally new. It's followed characters associated with previous ones, but also entire casts who have had nothing to do with anyone else. There's a sense of creative freedom with Star Trek which I just don't get from Star Wars. To paraphrase Patrick H. Willems, in the original Star Wars trilogy I can see all the things which inspired Star Wars, but now I just see Star Wars inspired by other Star Wars. Which is partly why I'm more excited for things like Knights of the Old Republic, the remake, and the High Republic era in general. Because while they feature a lot of the familiar Star Wars tropes, they are new eras with new characters and new ideas. I really hope both of these are successful, because then maybe the top brass at Disney and Lucasfilm will find the confidence to try something really new with the franchise. Like it or not, what modern Star Trek is doing by shaking things up is healthy for the franchise in the long run, and I'm actually encouraged by the negative reception to a lot of the tired fan service which pops up every now and then, because perhaps then the top brass at Paramount will learn that fans of Star Trek are excited by something new, and they'll continue to commission fresh and interesting shows. Now, obviously, Disney is pulling in an absurd amount of money anyway, and they have no real incentive to change their approach, so who am I to say they're doing it wrong? This video was really just here to express some thoughts, and I hope, whether you agree or not, you found those thoughts had at least some substance to them. Thank you for watching. If you like my videos, be sure to like, subscribe and share, and make sure to hit the bell icon to stay up to date with all of my new uploads. If you want to help the channel grow, join my Patreon or YouTube members using the links down below. There you can see videos early as well as some exclusive content. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons and members who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.